Welcome to the Live Like It's True podcast, where we look at some of the most interesting and surprising true stories of the Bible. I'm Shannon Popkin, inviting you to open your Bible with me to drink deeply of the story and to live like it's true. If you're here for one of our recent episodes, we're in the Judgy series. So we're looking at stories of judgment and mercy in the Bible and how to live like it's true that our God is a merciful judge. Hey, I'm so excited to have my friend Erika Van Haitsma back on the show. Erika, welcome.
Thank you, Shannon. It's always an honor.
It's so great to have you back. Your episodes have been some of my favorites all along. And, we've been friends for a while now. I just love talking about the Bible with you. But for those who don't know you, you got an undergrad degree in Bible at Moody Bible Institute, and then got your master's degree, studied over in Jerusalem at
Jerusalem University College.
There you go, Jerusalem University College. And what was your degree in?
Historical Geography and Archaeology.
Okay, which is so cool. I mean, who gets to study that for their, I love those things. So, and you bring in so much of that into our conversations, which I always love. So, we're in the middle of this Judgy series, and we're going to be talking about the Judgy prophet, Judgy Jonah.
That's a great title for him.
I know, Judgy Jonah. I think, he could have his own a whole book about him. There's so much in this short little 4-chapter book in our Bibles. But one of the things that we're going to talk about is how there's a lot of irony in this book. And so irony is when, you're expecting, like, the status quo would be this A to happen, and then Z happens. It's like right. The exact opposite of what you were expecting. And so we were trying to come up with, we're brainstorming, like, can we think, I'm sure we'll think of 5 other examples after we stop trying. But I did think of this one. So my son Cade worked at Big B, which is a coffee shop. I don't know if that's everywhere, but he, was working, and oftentimes in the drive-through, for whatever reason, one thing is he would sing to them. I don't know if that's normal. He would sing songs to them in the drive-thru. But I think he was a music major at that point. But they would often ask, like, so what's your favorite coffee drink? And he would say, oh, I don't like coffee. So I always get the hot chocolate. And then his manager was like, you can't say that. But so it's, I think, a little bit ironic that someone who works at Big B Coffee would not like coffee. And so that's not a great illustration. Sorry, listeners. We'll see if something else comes to mind as we.
Well, now that you say that, we used to be good friends with the family that owned the big House of Flavors in our area, the big ice cream shop.
Yeah.
And the son who ran the business, his favorite flavor was vanilla.
Oh, that's funny.
And they have, like, I don't know how
House
many
of
flavors.
Flavors.
Yes.
So I mean, we're thinking, just what is irony? It's when you're expecting one thing and the opposite happens. Mm-hmm. And so this book is filled with irony, right? Yes. There's a lot of, here's what you would expect from a prophet of God, and all the opposite stuff happens. And also the outcome is very ironic, know? So I won't give away too much, if you know the story of Jonah, you know what I'm talking about. But first, before we read our text, you know a lot about prophets and that historical part of our Bible. Tell us, what would you expect of a prophet? Because I think that's part of why we don't get the irony of Jonah, is we don't really know what a prophet, what they did, what was expected of them, the Jewish people. Give us a little backdrop of who's a prophet.
Well, a prophet was someone called by God to give a specific message. And normally they're sent to Israel. So that right away for Jonah is unique, that he's sent to. And at this point, they're kind of the big bullies. Assyria is the big bully on the scene. They're coming, and like 30, 40, 50 years after Jonah, they wipe out the northern kingdom of Israel. So God, you're sending a prophet to our enemies. In itself is a very unique thing. And we're used to prophets struggling. Jeremiah, Moses, you see hesitation on their side. It's a big deal to be called by God to be a prophet. But at the end of the day, they all obey. They all go, okay, I'm not thrilled, but I'll do it, God. And now you have Jonah, who as we learn, his father's name means truth or faithfulness. And so you have this prophet, the son of truth, the son of faithfulness, who is anything but faithful to his God.
Okay. You just expect, it's sort of like the way that we might think of our pastors, right?
Yes.
We would expect for them to be faithful to God, do what God asks of them. Like, of all the people in our churches, if we were going to pick one who would say, yes, Lord, it would be our pastor. That's just what you would expect. And that's how it was with the prophets. But the Lord is going to send our guy, Judgy Jonah, somewhere. So could you read, we're in Jonah chapter 1. Could you read verses 1-3 and tell us what translation?
So this one I have right now, this one's NASB.
Okay.
The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, "Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry out against it, because their wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah got up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa, found a ship that was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, and boarded it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord.
Okay, so what's surprising here? Where's the irony?
Well, when we read Jonah gets up, we immediately expect that he's going to go to Nineveh, like a prophet should.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, he goes in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, he's fleeing from God's presence.
Right. What
would that be for us? It would be like, I'm going to plug my ears in church. I'm not going to read my Bible. I'm not going to go to church.
Yeah.
No. I'm not going. I'm not doing what you're telling me to do.
But like Jonah does the exact opposite, because Nineveh is northeast and you have to go overland. So he goes southwest and he's going to cross the sea.
Okay.
So he's not just sitting there saying, I'm going to ignore you, God, put my finger in my ears.
That's true.
He's like, I am doing the exact opposite, God.
Yeah. And so does this mean he's going far.
Yes.
This isn't just a weekend trip.
This would be like a one-way trip to the moon. Tarshish to get there takes a year. I think it's in Spain.
Okay.
So he is going a year journey in the exact opposite direction. And in fact, it says that he paid the fare. In the Hebrew, it's actually her fare. It's a feminine form.
Okay.
And ships are feminine. And so the rabbis, the Jewish teachers, wonder if Jonah bought the boat to make sure he was getting as far away as he could.
My goodness.
Which means he had to liquidate probably all his assets. So he sold everything. He's gone and he's not coming back.
Oh, this is drastic.
Yeah.
This is not just to plug your fingers in your ears. This is extreme defiance to the Lord.
Yes.
Can you imagine being that committed
to disobey God that you are going to do whatever it takes?
Right. To sell everything. I have been disobedient, but he's put a lot behind this decision. What is driving this? Why would you be that adverse, that opposed to doing this thing that God wants? And I think, the writer of this book, do we think it's Jonah?
There's thought that it might be Jonah.
Okay.
Which is hopeful.
Yeah, that would be great if it was. Right. He's telling funny stories on himself.
Right. He learned his lesson.
Right. But whoever's telling the story does a great job. We always like to look at the literary aspects. And so when you tell a story, you want to hold tension. So you want there to be something interesting. You know how when you watch a movie and something happens in the opening scene, you're like, that is weird. Why would that be? And you don't really get it until, you find out, there's, this whole backstory that explains it. Well, for Jonah, the part that we don't see until I think it's, the beginning of chapter 4 is he's talking to God and he's saying, this is why I fled Tarshish in the first place, because I knew that you are gracious and compassionate, God, and you are slow to anger and abounding in faithful love, and one who relents from sending disaster. So I'm giving it away early just because I want for you to have this thread going through. We're talking about judgy Jonah. We're talking about when we judge other people. And so Jonah is the whole reason he's willing to buy the ship, liquidate everything, go a year's journey in the opposite direction. What's driving all that? He doesn't like the Ninevites. And I mean, that is an understatement. He cannot stand them. And he is afraid that God would be compassionate. Because look at what God told him to do: go to the great city of Nineveh and preach it, because their evil has come up before me. And so he's sent to preach against it, to give them bad news. Like, God's heard you. And you would think, okay, if you don't like these people, then you'd be happy to tell them that God is going to get you, But why? So what is he reacting to? He's reacting to the fact he said that he knows God is compassionate. So if he goes and tells them ahead of time, then God might relent. And that's what he's afraid of. So that's why that is what is behind this huge trip in the wrong direction. There's some big stubbornness there.
Yeah.
Some big defiance. So tell us more, though, about who are these Ninevites? It says that their evil has come up before the Lord. The Assyrians, how bad were they? Were they that bad?
Oh, they were, yeah. There are horror stories that history tells of the Assyrians. First of all, you can even see when they started out, Nimrod in Genesis founds the city of Nineveh and Babylon.
That's like in Genesis chapter 5 or 4.
Yes.
Or something. Yeah, Nimrod.
Yes.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it calls him a mighty hunter before the Lord. And you could take it a couple different ways in the Hebrew, but one way to take it is that even God is amazed at what type of a man he is, but not in a good way.
Mm.
And so this is the man that founds the city of Nineveh. And so he's like the father figure, that his people will be like him. And then the mother figure is, and I got to look for her name, Ashtar, I believe.
Oh, yeah, Ashtar.
And she was terrible. She was this horrible goddess. She was cruel. She was vindictive, or she could be a lover. You just didn't know.
Mm.
And so when these are your two figures that you kind of base your city on, this is who you are. This is what you're like.
Okay.
And so they were incredibly cruel to people. And they were, one of my professors at JUC would call them cat and mouse nations.
Okay.
And so Israel was a mouse nation. They were small, tiny, never could expand too much because of resources and where they were. But like Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, these are cat nations. They have the ability to make an empire and to get huge. And so Assyria and Egypt are constantly at this point battling back and forth, and they have to go through Israel. Assyria's in the north, Egypt's in the south. And so they're going back and forth through Israel, battling who's going to be the bigger cat. And Assyria wins. And like I said, 50 to 60 years after Jonah, they come through and wipe Israel off the map. They're they exile everybody. They're horrible. And they were cruel to their people. They would skin you alive. They would put a fish hook through your nose and lead you thousands of miles that way just to be cruel. They were absolutely merciless in how they treated their people.
Okay. So Jonah's not just then reacting to how cruel they are. I mean, that it sounds really, really bad, but he's also, there's some nationalistic. If you're a Live Like It's True listener, I'm guessing that you love to study the Bible like I do. We're getting quite a collection here of episodes on Live Like It's True, and I wanted to make it easier for you to search by particular story of the Bible. Maybe you're in a Bible study, you're studying a book of the Bible, or you want to do a deep dive on a particular story. Well, we've done a little work for you on the website, making it easier for you to search. You can now search by section and book of the Bible, and you can also search by series. We have the Judgy series, the Easter series, the True Story of the Beginning series. So you can find all of that at shannonpopkin.com.
Yeah, he can see what's coming.
Yeah. And these are enemies who are going to take, the irony is that, these nationalists might take all of his belongings. Well, he just liquidated all of his belongings because he doesn't want to go. So even more than hating them, he would hate for God to be merciful to them. Yeah. There's the irony. And I wonder if there's anybody that we hate that much. We are so disgusted with them that even more than for that person to do bad things for us, the worst possible scenario would be that God would show mercy to them and they would be sitting down the row from us at church. I mean, and I think, man, as I've been writing this book, Judgy Girl, we live in such a polarized generation. I think that has something to do with our phones and social media and like reinforcing our biases. I'm thinking politically or racism or, the haves and the have-nots, all these different ways, like generationally there's divides. We're just divided up in so many different ways. And so like this polarization of like, I loathe you because you
think differently than me. You voted differently. You look differently. You're acting different. You're not loving the same way I think love should look.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet even worse would be for me to have to accept you into the family of God. And that is just not okay, right? In other episodes, we've been talking about the story of Noah. People were evil in Jonah's generation. And then in the story of Rahab, we looked at the city of Jericho. They were evil too. So there's evil all over the world. It seems like it just spreads so naturally. But within Jerusalem, within the generation of Noah, there is someone, who God shows mercy to. In Noah's case, I keep getting Noah and Jonah because they're both water stories. In Noah's case, it's Noah and his family. God shows mercy on them. Like the story moves forward just with them. God shows his mercy on them. Rahab, God plucks her out of the city and God shows mercy on her. So always God's heart is not to demolish and to destroy. We tend to think that in God's heart is pent up all of this anger and judgment. He loathes us. He's so sick of those sinners. But that's exactly the opposite of what we see. I mean, Rahab just has to basically say, wave the white flag. Hey, could I have your mercy? And she is ushered out in the middle of battle. They usher her out of the battle and bring her. And she's now on her enemy's side. She is welcomed into God's people. And so like, that's God's heart. That's who he is. He scans the world looking for who can I show my mercy to? God loves to show his mercy on whoever will receive it. And that's why he's sending Jonah.
I think we all tend to sit in Jonah's seat, and maybe we'll get to this later on, because we want God to deal with evil and wickedness. And we say, deal with it. But we always look at someone else.
Yes.
God, deal with the evil in that person. Deal with that sinner. Yes. We forget that, guess what? I sin.
Yeah.
And my heart is ugly and deceitful at times, many times. Yes. And so if God deals with sin, then I need to be dealt with as well. But I want mercy on me. So how do I then say, but don't give mercy to that person?
Yeah. I mean, I think of it as othering. You know that word othering? Like, they're so completely different than me. I see no parallels. And that's really what our disgust communicates. When we're disgusted with somebody, we're not only saying something about how bad that person is, we're saying, I am completely different than that. There's no I can understand. Yeah. I too struggle in these ways. No. Disgust here's what disgust says. It says, I never have, I never could, I never would. Disgust always has this othering mindset of like, I would never be like those people. And that's what we see in Jonah. He's disgusted. It's like, if you take disgust out of the story, it makes no sense that he would go to such extremes to do exactly the opposite of what it's the disgust for the Ninevites. And that's what I see in this polarization, of our generation. Yeah. Just extreme disgust. We had this little dog named Gracie who was super naughty. And she would get into things, if you didn't put the stools under the counter, she didn't get anywhere she wanted. So she ate a whole pan of brownies one time.
Oh my goodness.
And she was like a little 10-pound dog.
She didn't die?
Well, she almost did. She got super sick and she's like running around the house, totally spazzing out because of all the caffeine and the chocolate. And so when she did stuff like that, I was like concerned for her. I was mad at her. I'm like, I'm going to have to clean this up when she throws up in the house. I was upset and I was, worried about her. Like, this is really bad. But sometimes, Erika, I come home and she would have gotten into the poopy diapers. Now that is a whole different level. Like that is just nasty. I cannot, I can relate to eating a whole pan of brownies.
That sounds yummy.
Not that I should,
right.
But I can
totally.
I can relate to that temptation. Yes. But chewing up poopy diapers, it is so disgusting. It is like, and I literally can say I never have, I never would, I never could. Like there's just this total othering with my dog, this disgust, and that it makes sense. And yet sometimes we do that with certain kinds of sin, Yeah. We look at this person's sin and we're just like, we're so disgusted. And yet what Jonah misses in his disgust is his own sin.
Yes.
And how unlike God he is.
Yeah.
Because like we just said, God is merciful. Like what's pent up. I love this quote from Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortlund. He says, we expect what's pent up in God's heart is anger and wrath and like judgment, but it's the opposite. What's pent up in his heart is compassion and love and mercy. And it's like, it just takes the tiniest prick.
Yes.
And we are flooded with his mercy. Just the tiniest turn of repentance. That's it. It's like Rahab, saying, can I be on your team? And so in the city of Nineveh, that's all it's going to take. And Jonah kind of knows that. And he's going in the opposite direction. So, okay, well, we've only gotten through a couple verses here, Erika. Sorry about that. But I did really want to emphasize his decision. So how does God respond? Just tell us the story of what happens next. Jonah's in this boat going the opposite direction.
Well, God lets Jonah start.
God's promises are like a set of parentheses. The first one is when he makes the promise. The second one is when he keeps it. And you never have one without the other. But often there's this long stretch between the two, much longer than we first imagined, right? That's what we see in Sarah's story found in Genesis 12 through 21. God promised a son, but in this wide stretch between the parentheses, she wondered, would God keep his promises? Could he? I'm Shannon Popkin, inviting you to come find the answer to those questions, both for Sarah and yourself, in my brand new 6-week Bible study titled Shaped by God's Promises, Lessons from Sarah on Fear and Faith. Find out how you too can be shaped by God's promises in the waiting.
On this boat journey, and God has such a sense of humor, and so God hurls a storm, a great wind at Jonah, and like you can't just picture it like a little catch, like it's the word hurl. When David is in Saul's court and Saul tries to kill David, he hurls a spear at David, like it's that word. Think of Zeus hurling a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
So he hurls this terrible wind at the boat, and the boat begins to get flooded. I mean, and the sailors, these pagan sailors, are terrified, understandably so. These are, and you have to realize these are like crusty old sailors. They've been there, done that.
It's all the musicals you've watched with the sailors and the, the peg legs and the, it's all these guys.
They can swear with the best of them. They have seen things you couldn't even fathom, and they're terrified.
Even they think like, this is not just some normal storm.
Yes.
So they're like asking, who are you? Who's your God? What is going on here behind the scenes? Like, this is not normal. Right. And they're trying to figure it out, and they come to Jonah, and he doesn't even really offer up the information very easily.
No. There's more irony that, first of all, these sailors are terrified and they're praying, and Jonah's asleep in the boat, and finally they wake him up. They get him on the deck and they're like, what's going on? Who are you? And they already know he's been running away from his God. He tells them.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, each God was considered regional. Like you were either the God of the mountains or the God of this city or the God of this land. Every God had their specific territory and they really couldn't cross their boundaries.
Oh, interesting.
And so now Jonah comes along and says, well, I was running away from God, but the God I serve is God of land and sea. He's everywhere. And it's like, Jonah, if you know this, why would you think you could run away from him?
There is some irony there,
like, you
right?
know this about your God. What were you thinking?
Yeah. I mean, he really is revealing what he thinks of God.
Yes.
And what we think of God is, I've heard this said repeatedly, it's the most important thing about us, right? What we think of God, how we think we can talk to him, how we think we can respond to him. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see the Ninevites have it right, how they're going to respond to God. And actually, the sailors and the captain, they kind of have it right. You know, the captain is like concerned for Jonah, like comes like, what are you doing sleeping here? Like, get up, you know? And at the end of this chapter, Jonah tells them, well, just throw me in the sea. I feel like it's a little bit dramatic.
It's totally dramatic.
Like just resignation, like, fine, then just throw me in the sea. And he's saying that more to God than I'd rather die.
Yes.
Than do what you say. He recognizes this storm is from God. He'd rather die than do what God says. And the sailors are like, oh, no, you know, it says, nevertheless, where's that word? He says, pick me up and throw me into the sea so that it will calm down for you. For I know that I'm to blame for this great storm that is against you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to the land, but they couldn't because the sea was raging against them more and more. So they called out, please, Lord, don't let us. So they call out to the Lord. Right. You know, Jonah hasn't. He is not willing to call out to the Lord. And even these sailors are willing to call him out. Don't let us perish because of this man's life, and don't charge us with innocent blood. So they're crying out for God's mercy. Like, our God is so full of mercy that if just that slightest little, you know, turning of mindset, God would have calmed that storm, right? Is any thoughts on the storm of Jesus and how he was asleep in the boat too?
Yes, there actually are definite connections, and you're supposed to see almost opposites.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
At the end of the story, Jonah really becomes an anti-Christ figure.
Okay.
Because Jonah, as we're going to see, he says, throw me in. First of all, he's not willing to commit suicide. He's not willing to throw himself in to save these sailors.
Okay.
He still wants them to do it. And his death is almost his trump card. You know, not only am I going to flee, if I can't flee, then I'm going to kill myself, God.
Goodness.
So you can't send me. And so he's willing to die so other people will die. Instead
that's
of
so
willing
interesting.
to die so other people will live.
Oh, there it is.
And so you get this definite, yes, you're supposed to see the connection and compare and contrast the
there
two.
it is. He's willing to die so that God might not show his mercy on the Ninevites. Right. And Jesus dies that God might show his mercy on all of us. Oh, wow. That is a powerful connection. But it just shows how far Jonah's disgust has grown in his heart. Yeah. It's really ugly. And I think it's in mine too. I think it's in my heart. I see it in myself.
I think if you don't see a bit of Jonah in yourself, you've missed the point of the entire book. Because the book closes without a real end. God finishes the book. And the whole point of the irony is so that at the end of the book, the author takes it and kind of twists it around, and it becomes a mirror that now you get to see inside yourself. When am I like Jonah? When am I feeling this much disgust towards someone else?
Well, and I do see the irony also that it's the church people who have the most disgust. It's the church ladies, you know, who it's like the longer we've been around the church, the more we know God's word, the more we're disgusted with sinners. And that's so misrepresentative of our heart, of the heart of God, right?
It's a hard balance, though, because on the one hand, there is sin and there should be disgust for the sin.
Yes.
But still loving the sinner.
Sin is disgusting.
Yeah.
It is. It's just that othering part.
Yes.
It's like not seeing it in my own hurt and that I need the mercy as well.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. I'm not going to ever say sin is not disgusting.
Right.
It's just the problem is that when I don't want mercy for other people.
Right. Yeah.
When I don't want God to give his mercy to other people like that, man, when we put that, and I do see that in church people, when they are more invested in their politics, their, I don't know, their agendas, their money, their whatever it is, so invested in that they're not even concerned about how they're repelling unbelievers with their attitudes. And when an unbeliever comes in among us, how are they treated? If they're not like us, like it's God's heart is so for the outsider bringing them in. That's just what I'm seeing over and over and over in these stories that I'm looking at in the Bible. God's heart is for the Ninevites. Not that he wants them to continue in their sin. No, absolutely not. But he's willing to send his prophet, however far, to go to them. And Jonah's response to that is no, not going to do it. I heard about a Facebook post that someone put up about, I think it was a school board. Yeah, it was a school board election. And someone said, I don't remember what the issues were, but they said, clearly everyone on this school board is of the devil.
Oh my goodness.
I know. So, so it's like, there were believers on that. It's like, what is that that's so polarizing.
Social media is so hard because it's easy to almost create like a fake person in your mind that's on the opposite side of your opinion. And then you speak so harshly against that false person. But everybody who agrees with you, who disagrees with you, you end up attacking. If we could actually sit down and see someone who saw differently than us, I think conversations face to face would be so different. Yeah. But because it's social media, we attack and we are so harsh.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, look at the parallel with Jonah. He doesn't actually know the Ninevites. He hasn't seen them. He hasn't, he just knows they're this big power, they're the cat. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like the cat. Right. He's the mouse and he does not like them and has, characterized, or what's the word?
Characterized?
Caricature. Right? There's a caricature in his head of who they are, what they look like. I'm thinking Tom and Jerry with our mouse and, but, he is so turned them into, he's so disgusted with them. They're so different than him. I mean, imagine Jonah in heaven meeting some Ninevites. Like how's that going to be for him?
It makes me think of Corrie ten Boom. Remember her story? Yeah. She, after World War II, and she's traveling around speaking, and a German soldier came up to her.
Yeah. And offered his hand.
Yes.
And she didn't want to take it.
Yes. And you can appreciate why. Like I think wasn't it one she knew in the camp personally?
She knew him. Yes. She recognized him.
Yes.
And he was so moved. He had become a believer.
Yes.
He was so moved by her message. He didn't recognize her.
Oh, he didn't?
No, but she recognized him. And so she said, if I'm remembering correctly, like, Lord, help me in this moment to extend my hand. And when she did, she just felt the love of God flowing to him. So, but she did the opposite of Jonah, right? She welcomed a sinner because she saw the parallel in herself, that she too is a sinner. She too needs God's mercy. I think that's a controlling idea when we deal with these others. Yeah. Is, do I need mercy? I do. They need mercy. They do. That is what we hold in common. Yeah. And God, in that moment that we are so disgusted with another person who believes differently, who looks different, who lives differently, in that moment that we're expressing our disgust, well, we're the sinner in that moment. because that's just so contrary to God's heart. Yes, sin is disgusting. It is. It's loathsome. And yet, here's what God thinks of sinners. He sent his only son to die in their place. He gave such a great sacrifice that he might bring them home, like that he might gather them in so that we could all be seated at that table at the marriage supper of the Lamb. So, I mean, we've kind of danced around it. How do we live like this is true, Erika?
I think with a lot of humility. That's just what I keep feeling. Instead of looking down on people, but looking straight on at them. Like, you've sinned, I've sinned. Could we not show compassion? Could we not have humility? Yeah. I read in a book once, humility is the mother of giants. And it stuck with me. Like, what could God do through a humble person? Wow. The Bible says Moses was the most humble man who ever lived. And you see that when Israel messes up time and time again. If anybody should be frustrated, I get frustrated with Israel. And yet Moses consistently stands up for them and finally gets to the point where he says, God, if you wipe them out, you have to wipe me out. He constantly places himself with his people and doesn't separate himself. And
which is why he's like Jesus.
Yes. And so consistently God grants mercy. And I think that's humility, placing yourself, saying, you know what, God, no, I've never committed that exact sin, but I have committed sin. Yeah. And sin is sin.
Yeah. Well, and, if you take any little, like, think of sin as like a cancer cell, think of ourselves apart from God living through eternity and how much that sin would grow, right? If there's nothing stopping it, it would take over any little sin. Like, am I greedy? Yeah, I'm greedy sometimes, Yep. And let that sin of greed grow to its fullest. Like, it could eat me alive. Our God saves us from who we would be without him, Right. Yeah. And so, like, to see even those granules of sin in myself is to recognize how unlike my God I am, and I need redemption. And I mean, my disgust, I think, is the sin I'm looking at right now, because that is a big sin. If there is a big sin in the Bible, it's pride, and disgust is like pride impersonated. You know what I mean? It's like in my disgust is a lot of pride. Disgust always looks down. Disgust is always this condescending superiority. Like, it's that I have never. And I was just thinking about, we lived in a neighborhood once where there was a sex offender in our neighborhood. And, the way that everyone responded to that neighbor was quite telling, It's like, sin is dangerous. And so you have to, like, I told my kids, they were little at the time, and I was like, if you ever see any kids going in that house, like, I think you should come get me. We want to be like, if we have kids over and, like, we're not going to play in their house, but also we're going to love and include and hope that God would work, as opposed to protect ourselves and, like, put up these barriers. Like, I'm just disgusted, disgusted.
There's wisdom. Like, I'm not going to send my kids over to his house, but when I see him, I can say hi and engage him in conversation and be polite.
Yeah. And so we looked for ways, like, cause it was hard. It was actually hard for me to, to deal with those feelings that and it was like, God was putting his finger on that in me. Like, no, you are going to deal with this. It's sort of like Jonah. He hurled that storm. Like, no, you are going to deal with what's going on in your heart. And sometimes God does that. He puts people in our lives, like, whether it's, who your kids are friends with, or who your kids marry, like they married the opposite political party. I never, or who's in your small group at church, like someone that it's hard for you to include and accept, or just these people that God, he positions them, he puts them in our lives. Not like, I don't want to compare that to hurling a storm at us, but he does put us in positions where we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's what that situation with the sex offender, it was me, I got to deal with this. And so he encouraged me in so many different ways. Like, how can I show love? How can I invite you in? And I don't have the end of that story to share. Like, this is how God worked in that. But I have seen other stories where God doesn't work through the disgust of Christians.
Right.
He works through those who are welcoming, who would show mercy, like that Corrie ten Boom story.
Mm-hmm. I think the lady who started the Roe versus Wade, she was the first one that it was a big deal. She wanted an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was her reason. She was her story and went to the Supreme Court. And so, of course, it's like churches, Christians wanted nothing to do with her. Well, years later, a little girl met her and had no clue who she was, but just loved her, was kind to her, and she became a believer. The lady who started Roe versus Wade became a believer. And it was because this little girl didn't know she was who she was, and so just showed compassion and kindness.
Yeah.
And God did something.
It's beautiful. That's compelling. That's winsome. That's what God was asking of Jonah, and that's what he's asking of us too. And he's going to continue pursuing us, make us deal with it until we give in to him.
Because he's a good God.
Yeah.
He is such a good God. And
yeah.
the more I study the Old Testament, the more amazed I am at the mercy of God and the goodness of God.
It's so good. All right. Are you going to come back for a second part of this conversation?
I would love to.
Okay. Thank you. Can I just remind you that these stories in the Bible are true stories? They're absolutely true. God could have given us a list of facts about himself, but instead he gave us a book filled with stories. These stories help us to know God, and collectively they help us to understand this overarching story that we are all part of. So I hope this episode will inspire you to study this story for yourself straight from the Bible. To help, I've put together my Live Like It's True workbook. It includes some of my favorite tools for studying the narrative sections of our Bible. Also, we're getting quite a collection of episodes, and we've done some work on the website making it possible for you to search for a particular story of the Bible by section and book of the Bible. Come check that out along with my other books and resources at shannonpopkin.com. Live Like It's True is part of the Resound Media Network. For more gospel-centered resources, go to resoundmedia.cc. We've got that link for you, along with any other links to resources we've mentioned in the show notes. All right, friend, are you ready? Now it's time to go live like it's true.